Andrew Wilson is a contributor to a podcast called the Whatever Podcast, which is a male supremacist show where incels, these incel hosts, sift through OnlyFans accounts looking for sex workers they can argue with and beat in debates. The show operates as a kind of catharsis for the children of divorce that makes up the vast majority of their mostly male audience. And if you look at the titles of some of their videos, they include words like entitled bimbo, slut, whore. And you wonder how many members of their audience have been accused of sexual assault at some point. Me and another comic had roasted these guys a while back. Andrew Wilson, he came across the clip that we did, and he wanted to debate me. He requested to debate me, but when I called into a show, I was greeted by Dr. Enigmatic, who is apparently a comic book supervillain who screens Andrew's calls. The doctor demanded to know the debate topic. I assumed it was going to be a debate about whether or not women should be drafted. The doctor said, because that's what the video we were roasting him over was about. The doctor said that if women want equality, then they should be drafted. And I pointed out, or they should be willing to be drafted. And I pointed out that there are women in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Jackie Rosen, who have who pushed legislation aimed at legalizing just that. But that legislation keeps getting blocked by evangelical lobbyists and the GOP. In other words, it keeps getting blocked by people like Andrew Wilson. They don't want women to be drafted. If that's your attitude, Dr. Enigmatic snapped, then you're not welcome here. That is my attitude, I told him. I wasn't calling in to agree with him. Anyways, to make a short story long, that debate never happened because this fucking pussy, Andrew Wilson, has a screener. Now, I'm going to play a few clips to demonstrate exactly why he would want to avoid a debate with me. And we'll start with...
religion, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everything from the union between a man and a woman is patriarchal. Everything from the church structure down is patriarchal. Women are not allowed to be pastors, not allowed to be priests, are not allowed to be clergy. It is a patriarchal structure, like you're not. Probably why our friend here fell off of it, but it is a patriarchal structure.
Is there a denomination that...
Well, that's actually not true, what you just said.
Well,
there are women pastors, I've met them.
Yeah,
but
fake.
they don't follow the
Well,
Bible.
that's
It's
your
illegal in the
belief.
Bible.
No, that's not only
But you
not only
can't
is that the
speak as though it's
Protestant
a fact
Bible, it
when
is a
it's
fact.
when it's actually not, and that's okay if that's your belief, and I might agree with that belief, but what you're saying is not factually true.
It is factually true. What I said was that...
No, it is not factually true, Andrew. This is an example of Andrew's most consistent debate tactic, lying with confidence. 27% of pastors are women. It was not long ago we all witnessed a lady bishop calling out Donald Trump to his face on the topic of mercy, something he obviously did not listen to, as he just kidnapped a bunch of immigrants and sent them to El Salvador, shaving their heads and then pointing their faces down when photographing them so that no one could identify them. Let me try and think of another famous female church leader in Christianity. Let's see. Mary Magdalene, that would be it. Mary Magdalene, the very first apostle, the sole witness to the rise of zombie Jesus, one of the main financiers of the Christian movement. Many people believe that Magdalene is actually included in the Last Supper. the painting of the Last Supper. If you look at the painting, you can see a feminine figure to the right of Jesus. Her head is leaning down to the side as if she's calculating a tip, because Jesus didn't pay for that meal. Andrew's debates are an embarrassment of riches that are rich with embarrassment. These incels love debating sex workers. They could invite activists from the Sex Workers Outreach Project, or even better, someone like Lorelei Lee, a brilliant porn performer who is now an attorney specializing in transgender rights. They could invite her on for a debate, but losing arguments to women does not suit the agenda of the Whatever podcast.
Long ago, we couldn't even have our own credit cards, without the permission of a man.
Yeah, but you also didn't incur any debt. That's why you couldn't have credit cards.
Yeah, but we were owned property by men.
Yeah, you weren't owned property. That's ridiculous.
There's not a point in human history where women have been property of men.
That's not what I said. I said you weren't owned property in this country, ever.
Me personally?
Coverture. What is that, Andrew? What's coverture? What does that mean? Coverture was the legal doctrine in the U.S. It was something that was carried over from England, and it ran this country. It was part of this country. It governed marriages until the late 1800s. Women were considered the legal property of their husbands, meaning any money that a woman made went to the man. So their labor was essentially slave labor. They weren't allowed to own property either. It began to fall apart, coverture, in the late 1800s, but women couldn't have credit cards or charge their husbands with rape until the 70s. To this day, women still share their husbands' last names, and as we all learned recently, they're still not allowed to be president.
I have three of my sisters are in the army.
And
so
all three of your sisters were never in combat, so.
one of them were.
No, none of them were.
One's in, yeah.
No, none.
Say it like you say it, talk about it like you know me.
Yeah, no, it's not about knowing you. It's about knowing how it works. And no, they don't send women into frontline combat. It doesn't happen.
Notice Andrew did a quick Mott and Bailey there, if you didn't notice. First he said women don't serve in combat. Then he said frontline combat. Of course, Andrew was wrong on both counts. His Mott is just as stupid as his Bailey. Women operate drones. They lead combat platoons. Last year, a female pilot took down an attack drone over Yemen from her aeroplane. And speaking of American war crimes, Lindy England was 20 years ago. How do you not remember Lindy England, Andrew, you dummy? Lindy was guarding prisoners in the middle of Iraq during the war. Do. Who went to jail for torturing civilians, jacking off dudes without their consent? Everyone knows it's Lindy. We just heard Andrew try to gaslight this girl into believing her sisters lied to her about being in the military. Sometimes this gaslighting works. Sometimes it works out for Andrew. He fools his audience because he fakes his confidence. He crooks his eyebrow and he manufactures a fake laugh. Even his cigarette smoking is a lie. Go watch his debates. You'll watch him smoke a cigarette, or Google image Andrew Wilson cigarette, and you'll see him posing with his cigarette like he's a Bill Hicks album cover. Dangerous. Bill Hicks back in the 90s used to have album covers like Dangerous and Relentless. And he'd be posing with his cigarettes. But Andrew's not dangerous. Andrew's far from dangerous. Andrew often refers to breasts as a woman's chest. He calls women bimbos. He talks like he's an 80s sitcom. Here's an actual quote, or by my best recollection, an actual quote from Andrew Wilson. I had reached the 10th level of Assassin's Creed Valhalla when I received an urgent message from Dr. Enigmatic. That is who Andrew really is. He's a gamer. He's not a rebel. And that dishonesty is what I find the most appalling, because the women that show up to promote themselves on this podcast, they answer questions honestly and they argue in good faith, and they're met with a liar, a consistent, bald-faced, ballless liar who has the audacity, who then, after lying, has the audacity to judge their character. On a personal note, I don't know why Andrew fears women to the point where he has an urge to control them. Maybe when he was a kid, his mom handed him a fork and convinced him that there was cake inside the light socket. Or maybe she just left, and now every time he meets a lovely OnlyFans girl, there's a voice inside of his head that screams, "Please don't leave me." But whatever it is, Andrew, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault, buddy. Whatever happened, it was not your fault. You were not responsible for what was done to you. The only thing you're responsible for is who you are now, and what you do and what you say now, today.